Chapters 8 and 9 are about interviewing. Before you go to an employment interview, you need to prepare. You should gather as much information about the prospective employer as possible. Begin with the internet. Go to the organization's website and look for information about products and services, the type of organization, whether it's public or private. If you can, find a mission statement. Find goals, the company vision, statements regarding company ethics, application procedures, and so on. Anything you can find out about the company online. Go to the library and research the organization. From independent sources, find out if they are in good shape financially. Gather information on their national or local reputation. This is a good time to consult a reference librarian because they are usually experts on how to use the internet and publish materials to find this and other kinds of information. If you know someone who works at the company, ask that person open-ended questions. For example, what's it like to work at XYZ Corporation? What do you like most? What do you like least? Try to talk to more than one person if possible because there are unhappy people in almost any organization, and you want to get as many viewpoints as you can. You want to plan very carefully how you will look at the interview. Business attire is very conservative. You don't want to be overdressed or underdressed, and you don't want to wear something that will distract the interviewer from what you are saying. I don't know if you saw it or not, but several years ago a Tide commercial was an interview scenario. The interviewer asked a question such as, well, tell me about your last job. And in the background you could sort of hear the person answering, but it was like wah, 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 because all the interviewer could hear was the talking stain. I always thought of it as the talking stain commercial. Anything about your appearance that is unusual, out of place, can become the focus of the interviewer's focus and detract from what you are actually saying. So make sure that you go well groomed. Make sure your hair and nails are clean, that your makeup is subtle, that your outfit is attractive but sedate, that your jewelry is simple, and that your scent is not overpowering. In fact, if you wear fragrance or wear minimal, if you come to my office for a mock interview, which I recommend, make sure that you either do not wear fragrance or wear minimal fragrance, because I'm sensitive to many fragrances. I've had to ask people to go wash their hand lotion off, or if I could open the door because their fragrance was getting my nose stopped up or was making me sneeze. And I usually advise people to definitely use deodorant, but not fragrance when you're going to an interview. Even things like a really strong smelling shampoo that someone has used that morning can make me sneeze. If you are a woman with very long hair, I recommend that you pull it back, or if it's really long, put it up. You want to look polished. You want to look professional. And ideally, nails should not be too long. A man should always be short, and the polish color should be subtle. This is really not a good time for bright red nails. Whatever you wear, and I recommend neutral colors, make sure that it is clean and in good repair. It is not necessary to spend a lot of money on your outfit. You can often find good items at consignment shops or off-price stores. And at least 2 days before your interview, do a dress rehearsal. Put on your outfit and check yourself out in a mirror from every angle. Ask someone you trust for feedback. If you want to add some jewelry, make sure it's subtle. Classic pearls are usually safe and not noisy like a bunch of jangly bracelets. If you want to add some color, a nice scarf if you're a guy, a tie in a nice color is good. Closed-toe shoes for ladies are better than open-toe, not sandals, never sandals to a job interview. You want to dress appropriately for the position. That doesn't necessarily mean that you want to dress the way you would dress to work there. You should dress more formally than you would on a typical workday. For example, a man who is applying for a job as a groundskeeper would not want to wear a navy suit with a white shirt and tie. That would be too formal. It would suggest that he expects to sit behind a desk when he's probably going to be out working on the grounds. You would want to wear some, dress nicely, but much less formal. For a woman, interview clothing for an office administration position, for example, would typically consist of a nice skirt or a pair of slacks, a crisp shirt, and a jacket. It's not necessarily that the slacks or skirt match the jacket, but I've always thought that a jacket makes you look more professional. A nice sweater can be an alternative for the jacket, but I really think that a jacket is always a good choice as long as it's nothing too bright or nothing too odd. For a man, a nice collared shirt and a tie, khakis, and a sport coat with leather shoes and dark socks and a nice belt would be a good choice for the interview. On the job, attire would typically be more casual. If you're going to a place you've never been to before, I recommend a dry run. Drive over and do it at the same time, approximately at the time of your interview, so you'll get a feel for the traffic. What it's going to be for that hour. If your interview is at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're probably going to need a lot more time than if your interview is for 10 o'clock in the morning, especially if it's an area where there's typically a lot of traffic during rush hour. And you want to arrive about 10 or 15 minutes ahead of time. On the day you go for the interview, make sure that before you leave your house, you have a phone number for the organization and the name of a person, either the person you're seeing or the person who contacted you about the interview, so that if you get stuck in traffic or have a flat tire or whatever, you can notify somebody and alert them to the fact that you have been delayed. Now that you have taken care of all that, you want to be sure that you are prepared to say the right things. The first thing you need to know is that it's really important to talk about yourself, your skills, and your positive traits. Interviewees who do not talk about themselves usually do not get hired. And it's easy to be frightened into silence. People are so afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing that often they don't say anything of any consequence. And people who do that don't usually get the job. The key to doing well is to plan ahead what you want to say and practice doing it. Many interviewers begin by saying, "Tell me about yourself." This is not an invitation to ramble on for 10 minutes about your life generally. This should be a carefully planned 1-minute recital of the most compelling reasons that person should consider hiring you. I cannot tell you how many times I've had students respond to this question by saying something like, "I am the single mother of 3 children, and every time that happens I want to go and bang my head against a wall." Put yourself in the interviewer's shoes and ask yourself what that person is going to be thinking. Most interviewers are going to think, how many days a week is she going to be out with one of those 3 children? You are there to talk about your professional self, and that is what you should do. If you are currently working in the same field as the job for which you are applying, talk about that position, what you do in that position, the skills you use in that position. If not, if you are a student, or if you work full-time but you're not working in your field, a good way to start is by saying you're a student at Gaston College. Tell what your major is. Talk about some of the relevant courses you have taken and some of the skills you have learned that are relevant to the position. Then talk about the transferable skills from your prior employment. Examples are organizational skills, managerial skills, productivity and time management, customer service skills, and so on. Follow that with your most positive personal traits. Are you detail-oriented, quality-driven, punctual, dependable, a people person? Whatever is best about you, that's what you want to talk about. End by saying that when you read the job description, you were immediately interested because you saw it as a good fit, or whatever you think is appropriate. Use any question that is asked you to talk about your skills. Be specific. If you're asked about how your education and training have prepared you to do the job, don't just say, "Oh, I'm a medical office administration major." You want to talk in specifics. Talk about having taken midterms 1 and 2, medical legal issues, medical coding, billing, and insurance, and medical office simulation. You might tell briefly what you learned in those classes, or whatever courses are relevant for you. The more specific you can be, the more detail you can give, the better, usually. People are always concerned about saying too much, but the truth is that I rarely ever find myself looking at my watch and wondering how I can conclude the interview and get that person out of my office so I can take the next person. Usually I am trying to find out whether the interviewee has the credentials I'm seeking, whether he or she wants the job, and whether the candidate is a good fit for the position and the company. Most people say much too little rather than too much. The more information I can get from an interviewee, the easier my decision will be if I'm a typical hiring manager. One of the best ways to be a memorable interviewee is to tell stories about yourself. Instead of just saying, in answer to the question, "Do you get along well with other people?" "Yes, I do." I mean, everybody's going to say that. Tell a story about how you got along with a client or a customer or maybe even a coworker who was tough to deal with. Now, never badmouth your company or your last supervisor, but talk about a time that you handled a situation with someone gracefully. Another way to be a successful interviewee is to use the portfolio to back up what you say about yourself and your skills. If you're interviewing for a position as a medical transcriptionist, for example, you should include in your portfolio as many of the following items as you can obtain. 1. Samples of medical transcription work you have done. Now, preferably from the classroom. No real work product unless you can redact, meaning black out, any details that might make it possible to identify the patient or physician. Never use real work product unless you can do it in such a way that no real data is discernible. Another item is a transcript showing your success in medical transcription class. Another item would be a letter of reference from your medical office transcription instructor. Another item would be a letter of reference from someone for whom you have worked as a medical transcriptionist. Another item might be a certificate or diploma showing that you have completed a program in medical office transcription. Refer to these items when appropriate and ask your interviewer if he or she would like to see them. A third way to be memorable is to ask questions of your own. One good question is an open-ended question like, "What is the most important qualification you're looking for?" If the interviewer names a qualification you have, talk about that qualification as it applies to you. You could also ask the person, how does the person who does this job spend most of her time at work? Then talk about your ability to do that task. Ask questions about the next step in the employment process. If the interviewer says he or she expects to make a decision in the next 2 weeks, ask if you may contact her if you do not hear from them in the next 2 weeks. As you leave, make a bid for the position. Say that after speaking to her about the position, you are more interested than ever in the position and that you are convinced you are a good fit. Say you hope you will be considered seriously for the position. After you leave the office, evaluate how the interview went. Make notes about what you did well and what you might have done better. Immediately after the interview, you should also write the interviewer a letter telling her or him that you appreciate the opportunity to interview for the position and that you believe you are a good fit for the position and hope they will consider you. Include in your letter any information that you wish you talked about in the interview but didn't. This follow-up letter is one of the most important things you can do to set yourself apart from the other candidates because most people do not bother to do it.